Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how I route my projects in Reaper. If you have any suggestions, you can either comment below or reach out to me directly on either Instagram, or you can also use the link in the description and get to my Discord server. Anyway, let's get into it. So I'm going to show everything down here on the mixer because my beautiful face is covering everything on the side. Mixbus. I basically route everything to my mix bus. I have my guitars, lead guitars, clean guitars, I have bass, drums, and all of basically everything except for the post-production and some of the stuff I really want to stand out over everything else. An example of that would be like the choir here, synthy stuff here, and all of like the impacts. So before I show any of that, the main reason I don't put my impacts into my mix bus is because I like them to be loud, but I don't want them to pump the mix. So if I were to throw these into my mix bus, every time they hit, the volume of everything else will just slam down and it wouldn't really give me the desired effect that I personally like. So if you're having trouble getting louder impacts and it's just kind of destroying your sound overall, try throwing them out of your mix bus, because then it'll just basically solve all of your problems. But I do know that sometimes having the mix pump down with the impact can be a desirable effect. So if you're not really getting that, try throwing that into your mix bus compression basically. So just to give a sound example of that, here's just a little section here. And I'll just play those solo as well, just so you can kind of hear what they're doing. So it's basically having an impact on every open note just to give it a super obnoxious punch. Aside from that, I also will not throw my snare reverb in there just because I like my snare to feel very open and spacey. So it's kind of more subtle in the way that I do it. But if I take it away, the snare just kind of sounds dry. I don't want that in my drum mix bus just because I don't want it to always be there. I kind of just want it to be exactly where I want it to be. So for example here, and if I just get rid of them, it's again super subtle. So yeah, it's just adding a bit more texture in the song and just kind of filling in the space between my riff, because it was a pretty empty riff, to be honest. And just to show another example, this is off of Survivor's Guilt. You can catch the card somewhere up here if you want to watch it. So I have the choir here doing a dissonant chord. So I really wanted this choir to have an impact and have a very specific feel in the song. And when I had it in my mix bus, it was kind of just destroying it. Like you could barely hear it. You can really get the clarity I wanted out of it. But throwing it outside of my mix bus and just having it over that whole bus entirely, it made it quite audible in my opinion. And you can see what I mean here. So yeah, like I said, it's more in the background, but since it is so quiet, having it in the mix bus would have just destroyed it. You wouldn't be able to hear it at all. So now that I've kind of gone over what I don't put in my mix bus and why I would put stuff outside of my mix bus, I'm just going to go through and show you how I bus things and how I kind of go about routing my mixes or just my projects in general, just so you can have a better idea of what you can do. So getting into that, we're going to go and check out, I'm going to go to the mix bus. It's going to have basically everything like I just shown. The guitar bus, I tend to only double track. I'll very rarely quad track. So if there's 4, I'll put them in 2 separate buses. So instead of the guitar texture, I call it, when it's just like an ambient in the background kind of thing, I'll typically just have a separate bus with 2 quad tracked guitars, and of course a left and right for each. For lead guitar, I will have it on its own. For clean guitars, sometimes I'll bus them, but mostly I keep them separate just because I like to mix different clean tones and use them in different spots, and I don't want to have the same processing on both, so I'll just completely separate those. I won't bust those at all. This is an example of where I kind of combined them, and that was basically because I wanted the same tone for both, but I just wanted one of them to be reversed to have a really weird effect like this. That's kind of the only time I would truly bus a clean guitar, at least in my style of mixing. For bass bus, I will just have the sub and the distortion track going into the bass bus. That's not entirely necessary, but very recommended by me. You can just throw gin bass and just have it on its own, just like my clean guitars over here. For drums, I kind of go wild. So I have my kick that houses my kick sub and kick. I have my snare for snare bottom and snare top. Toms for each tom here. Spot mics are stuff like hi-hats, splash cymbals, ride bells, all the little nuanced things that you would want to be a bit louder in the mix, but not kind of like drowned out. I'll throw that in the spot mics here. Overheads, self-explanatory. Rooms, self-explanatory. However, rooms or overheads depends on what you're using, but I'll just group them all together and process them all kind of as one. Just find that to be more efficient and how I get the best results, so you might have to mess around with that. And then I have everything outside of my mix bus. So outside of my mix bus, this isn't named, but this is basically like a kick ultra sub track, which sounds like this. You're probably not going to hear it if you're on a phone. Just to give it slightly more oomph, my snare verb, as I've gone over, choir, all the little stuff that was kind of being taken away from being in my mix bus just benefited entirely more without it. You could probably notice that I don't do parallel compression or processing at all, and I probably should, but I just find I don't get results I like when I do that. I'll show you how you can use that and kind of push things if you really, really need something to be in your mix bus and it's just way too quiet. I'll show you how to do that right now. My kick drum is not at all too quiet. However, let's just create a track within our mix bus, and let's just call this paracomp for parallel compression, and I'll take my kick, throw it in there, snare, throw it in there, and toms, throw it in there. From there, I'll just kind of play around with the volume, see what kind of works. So since I know my kick is already quite loud, I'll turn that down quite a bit. Toms are a little loud, so I'll turn that down a little bit as well. And now if I play this with the drums, they have a lot more power, a lot more kick to it, and I'll just do smash and grab just as a quick and easy little thing here. Put it on parallel here and just adjust. And with the mix. But while that doesn't sound bad, I don't prefer it personally. But parallel compression or processing isn't entirely limited to drums. I've seen Lance Prince do it with guitars and bass. So if you're looking for a super aggressive guitar tone or bass tone, you can also try that. Just kind of blend it in and mix it all together, balance it, and it'll sound great. But I'm just too stubborn to do that. I do not have vocals. However, the way I would route that, just to show you, say all of these are my vocal tracks right here. I do not process it with my mix bus. However, if I were to do that, what I like to do is open a new track and kind of put the mix bus instrumental, basically, and the vocal bus together into that group like so. And then I would kind of just compress it, make it feel more glued together, and that way it feels a little more polished. But that being said, a lot of routing, a lot of how you like to kind of divide things into each other or not into each other. That's entirely personal. What works for me may not work for you. For example, Lance Prince's parallel processing that he does, I could never do. But this is just to show how I go about thinking about it and just how I try to achieve the sound that I like. So take that as you will. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe or don't. Unsubscribe if you have to, that's fine too, but don't do that. Once again, I do have a Discord server, link in the description, and that's all for me today. See you guys next time. Bye.